All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the video. Today we're going to talk all about metrics. So if you're serious about hitting record months inside of your clinic, you are going to need to know the metrics of your practice on the back of your hand. So we're going to talk about all of the sales and marketing metrics that you must know to again go to the next level inside of your clinic. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Jeff. I own Clinic Growth Accelerator. We have helped over 350 offices in the past 5 years dial in their patient acquisition with modern day best practices. We leverage a lot of digital ads, social ads, Google ads, as well as a lot of best practices when it comes to email marketing, content marketing, and creating incubators, as we talked about in our email marketing video. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you do. And by the way, our goal on this channel, all we talk about is how to hit $200,000 months inside of your brick and mortar facility clinic. Now, we don't make any income claims. Do all of our clients reach 200 grand a month? Absolutely not. In fact, reaching $200,000 a month is a significant milestone for any business in any industry. So, we do not make any income claims. You're not going to watch this video today and skirt your way to $200,000 a month tomorrow. If you do, that's awesome. Send me a note and I want to hear your story. But for most part, that's not going to happen, and we do not claim that you will make $200,000 per month by watching this video. However, what we can do is we can share the best practices of the clinics that we've worked with that have reached those revenue numbers inside of their own businesses. So without further ado, let's dive into the metrics that are required to hit significant revenue months. First off, we must understand the core business KPIs, okay? So core business KPIs are the following. First and foremost, you gotta know your PVA. PVA is patient visit average. How many visits on average does a patient visit the business? That's a basic number. If we don't know how many times the patient is frequenting our practice, then we're gonna have a really tough time understanding the lifetime value, which is gonna come next, all right? Second piece is what's called a CVA. Other people call this a DVA. It's kind of an interchangeable term, CVA, DVA. Effectively what it means is collection visit average or dollar visit average, right? That ultimately means how much do you collect from a patient on average every time they come into a business. Now for some of you watching, you may be leveraging insurance, you may be leveraging all cash, or you may have a healthy mix of both that you're doing, all right? So the average is the average across all of your collection. You need to take your total cash flow, divide it by the total number of visits. That's going to give you a roughly CVA or collection visit average. Now both the PVA, the patient visit average, and the CVA matter a lot because when we multiply those two together, we can figure out what our lifetime value is. Now in the profession, in the clinical marketing profession, outside of the pharmaceuticals and the surgery centers and the MDs, right? There's an epidemic on people not spending enough money to grow their brick and mortar practice, especially in the holistic space that we teach, okay? So the reason why people don't spend a ton of money on marketing is because they don't know the math. They don't know what their lifetime value is. So they basically spend according to some extremely small number that ultimately really shortcuts the business's growth. So ultimately, you need to know your PVA and your CVA. You need to multiply those two numbers together, and you need to get your lifetime value. Until you know your lifetime value, you're not even in a position to do accurate marketing because you're literally going to be so conservative that you end up spending a couple $1,000s, and if you don't make that back in the first week, you panic and turn off your whole marketing effort. So the lifetime value equation is ultimately going to give you a lot of confidence and certainty in your marketing principles so that you can continue to spend in accordance to your lifetime value, not in accordance to just being nervous and fearful about spending money on acquisition. Now, once we know our lifetime value, we have to also come up with our CAC. CAC is client acquisition cost. Sometimes we call it PAC, patient acquisition cost, just to put a little fun twist on that, right? So that would be how much are you spending in its entirety. So that would be ad spend, plus a management fee, plus any additional staff commissions, divided by the number of patients that have said yes and signed up for care. We want to figure out how much we have to spend in dollars and cents to get a patient to say yes to care and make at least one initial payment towards their care plan model. That is what defines a cost of acquisition. That is the leading North Star metric in all of marketing. What does it cost you to get a patient to take action and sign up for your program? That is the main metric that factors in everything from how your marketing is performing to how your sales are performing. So cost of acquisition, extremely important, okay? Now, these two are gonna relate back together. We talked about our lifetime value and our cost of acquisition, okay? Now, both of these we need to know because we wanna check the ratio of the cost of acquisition compared to the lifetime value. In an ideal world, our lifetime value is 4 to 5 times or greater than our cost of acquisition, okay? That means the following. If your lifetime value is, let's say, $2,000 for easy math, okay? That'd be a little bit low for a lifetime value, but for the sake of this video, let's just say it's $2,000. That would mean that if we wanted to get a 5x return, that means our cost of acquisition would need to be 400. If we wanted to get a 4x return, that means our cost of acquisition would need to be 500. Okay, if it's less than that, we win. Okay, so we can make up with that by increasing lifetime value or decreasing cost of acquisition. But at the end of the day, we want to get a 4 to 5 to 1 ROI in terms of our ratio on lifetime value to cost of acquisition, all right? The next is churn. We need to factor in churn percentage. Churn, if you're not familiar when you're watching this video, churn is the percentage of patients that leave the business on a monthly basis. So that means that, let's say your business has this much revenue. And let's say you have a bad month and you acquire 0 new patients. That'd be pretty improbable, but let's say you acquired 0 new patients. Well, naturally, your business will regress a little bit. It'll go down because there's no new business, and every single month, even if you're amazing at what you do and you have great support, you have great accountability, you're still gonna lose a percentage of patients on a monthly basis. So that percentage that you lose is defined as churn. Now that can be, it can range depending on the model of the clinic. We've seen churn as low as 5%. I've seen churn as high as 20 to 25% in some poorly driven models, okay? So the churn percentage can vary, but we would say a healthy churn percentage would be somewhere between, on an extremely good, 3%, to like not so good would be like 15%. So less than 15%, but it's probably usually gonna be greater than 3%, okay? So you gotta factor that in. A way to track that is to take your total number of active paying patients at the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month, take that same base and figure out how many people have left from that original base. Don't factor in the news, just factor in the people that started and that are now not with you at the end of the month, and then that'll give you the ratio of churn expressed as a percentage. So now that we've got our business metrics, we can actually get into our marketing metrics followed by our sales metrics. But again, if we don't know what the business metrics need to be in terms of our, our cost of acquisition and our lifetime value and our ratios, we're not even prepared to do any marketing until we get those numbers dialed in. So if you don't have that numbers dialed in, go back to the first part of the video, re-watch it, do the math, and then start here on the marketing metrics, okay? So marketing metrics, first and foremost, total spend. What are we spending on acquisition? That could include management fees, vendor fees, copywriter fees, ad spend, total spend all in, okay? Next is cost per lead. Out of all that spend, how many leads did we get, and what is that cost per lead? Important to know, okay? Now, cost per lead is a leading indicator, okay? So as an example, some people are so focused on getting like the cheapest leads that they can get, which is fine, but sometimes they do it at the expense of cost of acquisition. So let me kind of talk about that a little bit more. You could get really cheap leads by offering every single one of your leads a free trip to Disneyland if they opt in. You're gonna get pretty cheap leads if you do that, but are they actually probable to convert on your main core offer? Probably not, right? Because you're leading them in with something that's not even relevant to the core offer, a trip to Disneyland. That's not relevant to care or getting treatment, right? So cost per lead, you wanna get it as low as you can, but you also wanna have the leads be looking for your service. They need to be relevant leads. So you wanna get the lead cost as low as you can, as long as the messaging is relevant. Next is our lead to booking percentage. What is the percentage of leads that are actually booking appointments? So if we get 100 leads, but only 2 of them book an appointment, that's a 2% booking rate. That is awful. That would be not good at all, and that would be extremely unprofitable for the business in terms of its advertising efforts, okay? So we need to have a good lead to booking ratio. We like to shoot for minimum 50%, but on the high end, we might see 65 to 70% lead to booking ratio, okay? And then from there, we can figure out our cost per booking. Now, cost per booking is kind of an outcome-based marketing number. Now, why do I say that? Because some people will be so focused, they're like, oh my gosh, well, like my booking cost is a little high. What's going on? How can I lower my booking cost? But then if you look back at the statistics, the lead to booking percentage was like 20%. And it's like, yeah, dude, like no matter what, your booking rate, your booking cost is gonna be high because your booking percentage is so low. If you have a very small percentage of the leads that actually book, even if your lead cost is great, but again, that small percentage only book, your booking cost is gonna be high. So you wanna have a good balance of a good cost per lead and an elegant booking ratio. Again, 50 to 70% is a good target for the booking ratio, which is ultimately gonna give you a great cost per booking, because the cost per booking is a factor of the cost per lead and the lead to booking ratio. Those are the main marketing metrics we need to keep a track on, okay? Now, once we've got those dialed in and we're metrically tracking these, then we can go into our sales metrics, okay? Now, sales metrics are easy. So it a little bit depends on how you run your clinic, but some of the clinics we work with will do a 2-day conversion process. Some of the clinics will do a single-day conversion process. That means that if it's a 2-day, they're typically not asking for the business on the first day. It's just an exploration, an exam, consultation. And on the second day, they're going into the report of findings and ultimately the financials and asking for the business. That would be a 2-day. Now, if somebody walks into your business and that same day that you meet them on day 1, you're gonna make the recommendations and ask them to work with you, that would be a single-day conversion process. There's not typically a right or wrong way to do it. We find that the higher the ticket item, the more probable somebody is to do a 2-day approach. But if something is a little bit lower ticket, then ultimately you may just do a single-day approach. Additionally, it's gonna depend on the niche you're in and the profession you're in as to whether you do a day 1 or day 2 approach. So you may not use all these metrics, but I'm gonna talk right now if you're using a 2-day approach. So let's say you're using a 2-day approach. The first metric is day 1 show rate. What is your percentage of people that have booked a day 1 that actually show up? If you have a good booking procedure, with good people on the phone, with good scripting, with lot closing, with ethical bribes, with all the tactics that you can have on the phone call, you should see 80%, 90% show rate for day 1, okay? If it's significantly lower than that for a longer duration of time, then you're just gonna wanna figure out like how you can bridge that gap. Maybe taking prepayments, maybe asking more questions on day 1, maybe adding a little bit of psychological language to ensure that someone's gonna keep their word on the appointment. Those would just be some examples, okay? So first is day 1 show percentage. Then you have your cost per day 1 show. How much is it costing you to get somebody in the door for day 1? Okay, so remember, in each of these metrics, we're pretty much gonna have a percentage and a cost, a percentage and a cost. So right now, if we know the percentage of people that show up for day 1, then we can reverse engineer all the way back to the lead cost to figure out what it cost us to get someone in the door for day 1. Then we have our day 2 schedule percentage. What are the percentage of leads that actually schedule a day 2? Then we have our day 2 show percentage, our cost to get somebody in for a second visit, and then we finally have our closing percentage. And then ultimately, we have our CAC. That's what would lead to cost of acquisition, is you reverse engineer all the math, starting with your cost per lead, and then you divide out all the percentages down to figure out your cost of acquisition. Because it's a game of attrition. If you do a 2-day approach, you're gonna lose a percentage in between day 1 and day 2. If you do a 1-day approach, you might not lose that percentage on day 1, day 2, and that loss there, but you might have a lower closing ratio because you're pitching so quickly, you know what I mean? So you just have to factor in all the statistics to figure out what's ultimately gonna work best for you, okay? Now, additionally, in the sales category, we have units sold in cash up front. This is pivotal. And I'm actually gonna talk a little bit about the financial model, and I'm gonna give you guys an example here in this video. But for right now, as we talk about units sold and cash up front, let's define it as the following. Units sold is just a number of people that have taken action and said yes. Number of patients that have converted. That would be units sold. So if you spend 10 grand a month and you convert 30 people, that would be 30 units sold. Then you have cash up front. So cash up front is important because it allows us to liquidate the investment we made in getting people in the door. So if we spend 10 grand a month on marketing, ideally your cash up front over your first month's conversions is at least 10 grand. Like you wanna be able to get a 1-to-1 ratio of amount invested to the initial cash back and cash return. That way you get your investment back and you continue to spend money in the following subsequent months, okay? So units sold and cash up front, extremely important for you to be tracking. Then we have total deal size, which is a case value. So if you're doing like a 3-month case with a patient up front or like a 2-week case, it can vary, but that is your initial case value. What is somebody gonna pay for that initial duration of care? And then finally, we have our lifetime value, which we talked about in the business metrics, okay? Now, I'm gonna go through a live calculation with you guys on how we actually do this. All right, so let's walk through a live example on the screen here with me. So we're gonna look at the month of May. I'm recording this in May. So here's a live example for you guys. So let's say your goal is to spend 10 grand a month, okay? Elegant goal, right? Now, for a marketing budget, we typically are looking for about 10% of the goal revenue. So if your goal revenue is $100,000 a month, you probably need to be spending close to 10 grand a month. And that's where a lot of providers end up shorting their business, is because they just don't quite literally spend enough to reach the next level. The business needs more energy if you want to get to the next level, okay? So let's say you're spending 10 grand a month, and let's say we actually did spend 10 grand. So the way this whole sheet works is there's a goal and there's an actual, okay? Goal and actual. So with the 10 grand in spend, our goal was to get 135 leads. Let's say we got 150. That's awesome, okay? That means that we ended up landing at $66 per lead. Then we had a 32% schedule rate. We're gonna come back to this as an example, but 32% of the leads scheduled, which meant that 48 of the leads that actually came in, scheduled appointments, which meant that our cost per day one scheduled was $208, okay? So as on the front end marketing metrics, before we go to the sales metrics, we can see that our cost per day one schedule is significantly higher than our goal. Our goal is 123, but we're at 208. Now, why is that? Well, our lead cost was good, but our booking rate was so poor. That is a result of why people need to get a higher percentage of their leads to take action. Because the higher the percentage of leads that actually schedule, the lower it costs you to get somebody in the door, okay? Now, as we go into our sales, so we look for day one, we're doing a day two, like a day two sales conversion process here. So day one show, we look for 60% minimally, and here we are at 75. That means that out of the 48 people scheduled, we had 36 people in the door. 89% of people scheduled a day two, which means 32 people scheduled day two. And then of that, we had 28 people show up for day two, which is an 88%. From there, we had 21 people close. So to reverse engineer that, we had 48 people scheduled day ones, 36 people show up for day one, 32 out of 36 people schedule the day two, 28 out of 32 show up for day two, and then 21 out of 28 actually converted on the care, which meant that our conversion was about a 75%, okay? Now, of the 21 people that converted, we got $14,700 cash up front, which is great because we only spent 10 grand to get them in the door as patients. And in the first month, like right when they said yes to care, those 21 people, we made $4,700 more than what we originally invested. That's awesome. Now that we literally got our money back in the first month, plus an additional $4,700, so we cash flow positive on the attraction of these patients. And now we have them for their lifetime value. And we also have 21 new people in the business that over the next series of months are gonna become referral systems for us, okay? So we should be able to take these 21 people and probably turn it into like 30 to 35 patients over time, because again, we're gonna get referrals from these 21 people. You see, cold acquisition is always the most expensive, okay? But if we can get referrals from these people, that's gonna lower our acquisition cost on average throughout the whole organization, okay? So we collected $14,700 up front. We know that our total deal size, I just put it at 2,000. So 21 people times 2,000 is $42,000. So ultimately, our cost of acquisition was $476. It cost us $476 to get someone to say yes to care. But our LTV is $4 grand. Okay, that's typical for a lot of our clinics, is they're about a $4,000 lifetime value. So if we take 4,000 divided by 476, that gives us an 8.4 lifetime value to cost of acquisition ratio. That would exceed our target of 4 to 5 to 1 or more, okay? So that is how we might model something all the way through to see not only how the business KPIs are working, but how the individual marketing and sales KPIs are working as well. And you have to be able to write all these percentages out because, again, you need to actually figure this out for your own business, and you're gonna have different bottlenecks, right? So like we saw here, only 32% of the leads that actually we got actually scheduled. And we still came down to a $476 cost of acquisition, right? So imagine if we got our day one schedule percentage to be double, like 60%. I mean, dude, that would have literally you would take your cost of acquisition and you'd cut it in half, literally, you know? So this is a kind of like a basic way that we would do financial modeling, right? Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about how we do this for our clients hands-on, there are two ways that we can help you, and if you look below in the notes, you'll find links to apply for these programs. Number one, we have our Accelerator program. That is our flagship program. Okay, we've had that program for about 6 years now, and that's where we actually go into a provider's business and we actually turn on the acquisition system ourselves. It's all done for you. We help with the bookings, we help with the sales conversion, we help with getting people in the door. It's very hands-on, and your team is actually able to meet with us on a weekly basis every single week to do a review to make sure that both parties are delivering on the promises. So if you want to apply for that, we do have minimum revenues for that. Usually we won't take on anybody that's doing less than about $50,000 a month in that program. Now there is a situation where if you're doing less than 50 grand, but you've got a very good healthy net margin, we may still consider your application, so go ahead and apply anyway. And if you're below that number, but you're still looking to take your business to the next level, we have our Master Clinical Marketing Program. That is more of an info product where we give you access to all of our best practices and trainings, and then your team takes the trainings, learns the skills, and then grows the business. So you take the knowledge, do it yourself, and then actually apply it to your business to ultimately increase the revenue. And the goal for us transparently is for if you join the Master Clinical Marketing Program, we want you to increase your revenue to the point where you can come to us later and say, hey, I want to join the Accelerator program, and have you guys come in as a partner to take the business to the next level, okay? So some final thoughts as we wrap up today. First and foremost, if you have not a clue what we were talking about in this video, and at the end of the video, you're like, dude, I didn't have like half of these metrics that you guys are tracking, my first piece of advice would be for you to spend your day off modeling these metrics to the best of your ability and actually having percentages for everything all the way through the patient journey. Because what you're gonna do is you're gonna actually become aware of where your current bottlenecks are, and which is ultimately gonna give you clarity as to what you need to fix in your business. Now you might find that all of your percentages are good, but maybe your cost of acquisition is still too high, or maybe your lifetime value is just too low. That's ultimately gonna give you insight into what you need to fix next. Because no matter what, if your lifetime value is extremely small, no matter what your cost of acquisition is, you're probably always gonna struggle. And here's the reality. Ads and advertising expenses can only go one direction, and that is up over time, which ultimately means as advertising expenses go up, your lifetime value has to also increase, if not exceed the expenses of the advertising, okay? So by having these metrics, it'll at least give you a baseline, and then you'll know exactly what you need to do next to fix your business, to have the highest probability of hitting record months. So if you guys got value, please hit subscribe. We are putting out videos like this frequently. We are dedicated this channel entirely to hitting $200,000 months inside of brick and mortar clinics. And again, we're gonna be putting out videos like this very frequently. So hit like, hit subscribe, and make sure that you tune in as we put out more content. They are gonna be extremely actionable pieces. We're not gonna hold a lot back. We are gonna hold back some of our best practices for our Accelerator program and our Master Clinical Marketing program. But my bet is that you could watch a lot of this content, apply it to your business, and still make a boatload of money. So I hope you guys got value. As always, I'm Jeff with Clinic Growth Accelerator, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.